Hello everyone, and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. In the sumptuous hallways of Forrester Creations, where designs of couture gowns danced alongside decades of family secrets, John Finnegan found himself staring at a laboratory study that could reveal everything the Forrester dynasty treasured. The paper trembled slightly in his hands, not out of fear, but because of the significance of what it implied. Finn, as a doctor, was used to giving life-changing news, terminal illness diagnoses, unexpected babies, miraculous recoveries, but this was different. This wasn't about a patient. It was about his wife's family, which formed the basis of Steffi Forrester's identity. The DNA findings, which were processed covertly through a private lab to prevent hospital rumor, validated a concern he had harbored for weeks during a late-night talk with his adopted mother, Lee Finnegan, who had dropped cryptic hints about old adoptions and hidden bloodlines. It had begun innocently enough, or as simply as things could go in Los Angeles' elite circles. Ridge Forrester, the charismatic dressmaker with a chiseled jaw and unflinching confidence, had been suffering from unexplained health problems, including exhaustion and intermittent aches that no routine tests could diagnose. Steffi, ever the protective daughter, had asked Finn conduct some advanced genetic testing, manipulating strings to make it happen secretly. "Dad's been through enough," she remarked, her eyes pleading as they sat on their cliffside home overlooking the Pacific. "With everything Mom went through, and now this, just make sure he's okay." Finn agreed and drew blood during a family supper at the Forrester mansion, labeling it anonymously to ensure privacy. However, the consequences were not anonymous. The genetic markers revealed a story far more deadly than any common sickness. Ridge had a rare hereditary illness, a degenerative disorder caused by a unique DNA mutation that was aggressive and generally fatal if not treated early. It was the kind that skipped generations or remained dormant until activated by stress, and Ridge's life was nothing short of hectic, with relationships with Brooke Logan and Taylor Hayes, corporate struggles at Forrester Creations, and the never-ending turmoil of his children's lives. Worse, the mutation originated in a lineage that did not correspond to Eric Forrester's known genetics. Finn obsessively cross-referenced it, retrieving ancient family medical data while updating health files for company insurance. The result was obvious. Ridge was not Eric's biological son. This wasn't fresh rumor in soap mythology. Whispers about Massimo Marone being Ridge's biological father had persisted for decades, a scandal hidden beneath layers of forgiveness and family loyalty. But Finn was an outsider married into the clan, focused on medicine rather than tabloid recaps of Forrester feuds, so he was unaware of its history. For him, this was new devastation. The deadly aspect was not just the disease itself, but how it broke the illusion. What does Ridge's lack of familial ties to the Forrester family signify for his claim to the corporate throne? Steffi wielded her pure Forrester pedigree as a weapon against the Logans. And the sickness itself, if left untreated, Ridge might die within years, if not sooner, given his age and lifestyle. Finn paced his hospital office, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry bees. He imagined informing Steffi first, bracing her for the double blow. She idolized her father, seeing him as the unshakable link between the Forrester legacy and her own future. Ridge had reared her and guided her through loss, Phoebe's death, the unending triangles with Liam Spencer, and now this? Finn's heart hurt for his wife, who had endured shootings, comas, and Sheila Carter's lunacy. How could he drop that bomb without destroying her? Finn drove to the Forrester mansion that evening as the sun began to set, coloring the sky in orange and purple. The family had gathered for what was intended to be a relaxing meal, with Eric at the head of the table, Brooke flying around with wine glasses, Taylor lending silent support from her recent comeback, and Steffi speaking animatedly with her brothers. Ridge was there, of course, shrugging off his recent exhaustion as just the price of genius. Finn's stomach clenched as he entered, and the perfume of Donna's gourmet spread did nothing to alleviate his sickness. He took Ridge away first, into Eric's study, which was filled with framed designs and family photos that now seemed like lies. "Ridge, we need to talk privately," Finn remarked, his voice firm throughout the chaos. Ridge, the eternal optimist, clasped him on the shoulder. Doc, if this is about my blood pressure again, I promise I'll cut back on the scotch. But as Finn handed over the findings, Ridge's smile faded. He perused the files, his designer eyes narrowing at the clinical language, until the essential terms stood out. Incompatible paternal markers, inherited neurodegeneration, and prognosis, without therapy. What the hell is this? Ridge shouted, raising his voice. You're saying I'm not, that Eric isn't. He couldn't continue. The room swirled. Memories rushed him, growing up as Eric's golden boy, fighting with Thorne over favoritism, and taking pride in carrying the Forrester name through scandals and victories. And now, proven in black and white, the old tale was true. Massimo Marone, the rival who had formerly claimed him, was his biological father. The ailment was Marone blood, which was both lethal and devious. Finn stated calmly and professionally that the illness was manageable if detected early, and gene therapy trials were promising, but it required immediate attention from specialists. But Ridge was scarcely listening, his world crumbling. Does anyone else know? He said hoarsely. Finn shakes his head. Not yet. I wanted you to hear it first. However, secrets in the Forrester home were like smoke, seeping through crevices. Steffi heard the heated shouting and burst in, her cheeks paling as she grabbed the report. Dad? Finn, what is this? Tears welled up as she read the DNA mismatch, which slammed her like a betrayal from the grave. You're not Grandpa's son? All this time, and this disease? It's going to kill you. The dinner devolved into mayhem. Eric, summoned by the hubbub, glanced at the papers in bewilderment, his own health concerns fresh in his mind. Ridge, my boy, we've heard whispers but confirmed? Brooke said, her hand covering her mouth, torn between devotion to Ridge and the Logan Forrester division. Taylor, ever the psychiatrist, attempted to mediate, but her own experience with Ridge made the situation personal. Ridge stormed out to the terrace, and the cool night air did little to soothe him. His world was destroyed, not only by the paternity, which had long been suspected but denied, but also by the deadly ticking clock in his veins. He considered his children, Steffi, Thomas, and RJ, were they pure Forresters, or were they tainted by this truth? The company, the legacy he had battled for, now felt false. Finn followed, attempting to offer optimism. We can manage this, Ridge. Therapy, medication, it's not a death sentence. But Ridge whirled on him. You think that's all? This changes everything. I'm not the Forrester heir. Eric built this empire for his blood. And I'm Marone. The name had a bitter flavor. Flashbacks bombarded him. Arguments with Massimo, a brief alliance, then rejection. And now, this cancer is the final curse of a parent he scarcely knew. Inside, Steffi collapsed into Finn's arms and sobbed. How could you keep this from me any longer? My father is dying, and he isn't even... She couldn't say it. Finn hugged her, murmuring apologies and emphasizing the confidentiality till confirmation. But the harm had been done. Finn, the outsider, bore the unpleasant truth, and trust was slightly damaged. The aftermath had far-reaching consequences. Eric, hurt yet determined, drew Ridge into an embrace later that night. Blood or not, you're my son. Always have been. But the words rang hollow in the face of science. Brooke pledged her support, but her eyes were filled with fear for Ridge's health and the family's stability. Taylor provided gentle guidance, reflecting on her own experiences with heart failure illusions. Days merged into consultations with physicians, Ridge enduring additional tests, the prognosis bleak, but not hopeless. Ridge rejected experimental treatments in Europe, drowning in an identity problem. At Forrester Creations, murmurs circulated. Staff sensed tension at meetings where Ridge snapped at designs and Steffi was absent more frequently. Finn became the reluctant pillar, coordinating care and handling familial blame. Steffi alternated between grief and rage, lashing out at Hope Logan during a chance encounter and accused the Logans of constantly sabotaging the Forresters. At least we're blood, she exclaimed, then winced at the irony. Ridge revisited his history, unearthing old letters from Massimo and lamenting lost relationships. The lethal secret was not only the disease, but also how it exposed long-buried vulnerabilities. Inheritance concerns arose. Who would lead if Ridge faltered? Steffi pressed harder, losing allies. Despite the shattering, glimmers of healing arose. Ridge and RJ grew closer as they shared design aspirations free of legacy pressure. Finn and Steffi bonded intimately, and his revelation forced them to be honest in their marriage. Eric focused on true family, which goes beyond DNA. Ridge stabilized months later, following several rounds of medication, and the sickness was handled. The paternity truth is merged, not destroyed, but redefined. He selectively embraced his Marone ancestry, considering Eric to be his father. The Forrester world did not vanish. Rather, it grew, becoming stronger in frailty. But the first reveal, the moment Finn spoke the words that destroyed Ridge's illusions, remains as the fundamental fracture, lethal DNA secret that forced a confrontation with mortality and identity. In the bold and magnificent turbulence of their lives, it was probably the most human moment of all, reminding them that legacies are built not just on blood, but also love, forgiveness, and resilience. The story unfolded with never-ending twists, as these families always do. Ridge's health issues were linked with new romances, Brooke's unflinching support colliding with Taylor's sympathetic pull. Steffi, crushed, leaned on Finn, and their friendship became stronger during the crisis. Corporate intrigue grew. Rivals saw weakness in Forrester, but the family rallied. Finn regretted nothing. His duty was to tell the truth, even if it meant death. Ridge, once shattered, patched it back together, emerging not broken, but deeply changed. The secret, once revealed, lost its deadliness and became a catalyst for authenticity in a world of facades. And thus life in Los Angeles went on, dramatic, passionate, and unforgiving, where DNA's secrets might topple empires, but imperfect and intense love repaired them. Finn was alone in his office long after the hospital halls had quieted, the soothing hum of fluorescent lights doing little to soothe the tempest within him. He had been staring at the file for nearly an hour, reading the same phrases again and over, hoping they would rearrange themselves into something less painful. They never did. The reality was in black and white, irrefutable and harsh, and it had far-reaching ramifications beyond the hospital's sterile walls. What he possessed in his hands was more than simply medical data. It was a secret with the potential to destroy lives, particularly one man's. Ridge Forrester had constructed his life around certainty about who he was, where he came from, and what legacy he would leave behind. Finn understood that divulging this knowledge would cut through his certainty like a dagger. However, keeping it hidden was equally terrible. Finn was bound by ethics as a doctor, but the issue went far beyond his professional responsibilities. It was intimate, emotional, and hazardous in ways he had not experienced before. The DNA test had been ordered quietly, almost carelessly, in the name of normal medical clarity. Nobody expected it to turn up something so explosive. Finn had not expecting it either. But when the results came in, the truth refused to stay hidden. Ridge Forrester was not biologically who he claimed to be. The man who defined generations of the Forrester family, who proudly held Eric Forrester's name and legacy, was living a lie built decades ago on quiet, terror, and desperate choices. Finn closed the file and exhaled deeply, attempting to steady his hands. He thought about Steffi, her beloved family, and Ridge, who had always been a source of power and authority in her life. How could he be the one to cause such damage in their world? How could he not? No matter how terrible it was, the truth demanded to be heard. Finn's thoughts turned to the past as he tried to make sense of the test findings. Long before scandals made headlines and family feuds were well known, there was a moment, a secret affair, a stolen night, a decision that changed everything. Ridge's biological father was neither the guy who reared him, not the man whose name he bore, but someone whose relationship to the family had been hidden by years of loyalty and silence. The revelation threatened to upend decades of history, changing connections and identities in ways no one could have foreseen. Ridge, unconscious of the ticking time bomb, went about his business as usual, absorbed in Forrester creations, disputing designs, protecting his family, and remaining convinced that blood determined loyalty. He had always been proud of his Forrester ancestry, frequently citing it in times of struggle. It was the basis for his authority, confidence, and sense of self. Finn knew that once the truth was out, Ridge would question everything: his place in the family, his right to lead, and even the love he thought was unconditional. Finn finally decided he couldn't wait any longer and asked for a private meeting with Ridge. The weight of the secret felt heavier with each passing minute. Ridge arrived expecting a regular talk, possibly about Steffi or the children. Instead, he was faced by Finn's solemn expression, which immediately put him on edge. The room felt smaller as Finn began to speak, carefully selecting his words, keenly aware that there was no graceful way to deliver what he was about to say. He recounted the facts behind the DNA test, emphasizing that it was not conducted out of suspicion or malice. Ridge listened with arms folded, perplexity gradually giving way to discomfort. Ridge's face drained of color as Finn gave the results. Ridge initially refused to accept it. He laughed furiously, arguing that there must be an error, that tests may be incorrect, and that this was impossible. Finn anticipated this reaction and calmly described the results' precision, many verification, and the scientific assurance that underpins them. Each statement struck Ridge like a blow, chipping away at his denial until only pure disbelief remained. Ridge's mind was overwhelmed with memories of childhood experiences with Eric, lessons learned, arguments, and wins shared. Was this all a lie? Has biology erased years of love, mentorship, and shared history? Ridge was left reeling as the questions outpaced the solutions. Anger quickly replaced shock, and it burned fiercely. He begged to know who his biological father was, his voice trembling from wrath and anguish. Finn paused, aware that naming the man would only aggravate the hurt. But Ridge demanded the truth, and Finn delivered it. The name weighed thick in the air, evoking decades of unspoken tension and unsolved history. Ridge staggered back as if he had been physically struck, his mind attempting to reconcile the information with everything he had previously believed. The consequences were quick and terrible. Ridge stormed out, unable to comprehend the severity of what he had just discovered. He confronted Eric, his voice shaking as he demanded an explanation. Eric, confronted with the moment he had long feared, finally revealed the truth. Ridge's confession was full with sorrow, explaining how love, fear, and a desire to protect a family had led to a decision that defined his entire existence. Eric's admission did little to alleviate Ridge's pain. Instead, it exacerbated it. He felt betrayed not only by Eric, but by everyone else who knew and kept the secret. Trust, once unshakable, vanished in an instant. Ridge questioned whether he actually belonged anywhere, whether his identity had been taken from him before he had the opportunity to select who he wanted to be. The news spread quickly and affected everyone who knew Ridge. Brooke sought to console him, divided between her feelings for Ridge and her amazement at the reality. She tried to convince him that biology did not determine the man he was, but her words fell flat against his overwhelming sense of loss. Taylor, too, was shocked, recognizing that the guy she had loved and made a life with was dealing with a fundamental shift in his identity. Steffi and Thomas have their own emotional problems. Ridge had always placed a premium on family legacy, which now appeared to be in jeopardy. Steffi was concerned about what this would mean for her father, and Thomas was angry at those who had allowed the lie to continue. The Forrester family, which had become accustomed to drama, was confronted with a truth that struck to its core. Finn observed the turmoil with a sorrowful heart. He questioned whether telling the truth had been the proper decision, even though he knew it was unavoidable. Steffi grappled with contradictory emotions, thankfulness for Finn's candor and hatred for the hurt it had caused. Their relationship was stressed as they worked through the fallout together, each seeking to assist the other while processing their own emotions. Ridge went inward, separating himself from his family and the company he previously confidently managed. He began to question his position at Forrester Creations, wondering if his authority was based on a false foundation. Old concerns emerged, exacerbated by the realization that his bloodline was not what he thought. The man who had once stood proudly now appeared unsure, plagued by concerns about his worth and identity. Rich was forced to confront a harsh truth as time passed. The man who nurtured, loved, and shaped him was still his father in all important ways. Biology could not undo years of common experience. He gradually, painstakingly, learned to detach his sense of self from the secret that had devastated his life. Forgiveness did not come easily, but understanding began to grow. Finn, however, had his own scars from being the bearer of such dreadful news. He discovered firsthand that, while truth is important, it frequently comes at a terrible cost. Watching Ridge struggle pushed Finn to consider the fragility of identity and the ability of secrets to impact lives across generations. The Forresters would never be the same. Relationships were strained, trust needed to be reestablished, and wounds would take time to heal. Despite the agony, there remained a chance for progress. The revelation caused everyone to consider what actually defines family: blood or love, legacy or choice. Ridge's world was shattered, but not destroyed. The fragments revealed a greater grasp of who he was and what was actually important. The lethal DNA secret had removed certainties, but it had also removed illusions, leaving a man left to remake himself on his own terms.